So for those of you that are here, or for those of you at home, what we want to do is gauge interest in this program. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about it, how it would work, ways that you would be able to help. And then with the paperwork that's going around, there are two things. One is just kind of an overview of the types of activities that this would involve. The other is a little half sheet that asks you to write your name and indicate if you are interested in helping, and if so, what area you might have some interest in. So we're going to go through, talk about each of the areas and the activities that are involved. So first, could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I mentioned last week, this is about sponsoring an Afghan family who are refugees who have arrived in the last couple of months, and this is about helping them to get integrated into the community. It's a year-long program, and the activities change over the course of the year. It really depends on the family that we would be assigned and what their particular needs are and what sort of timing they feel comfortable with. So the program is a year long. It tends to be more intense at first and a little easier as the year goes, but the goal is that over the course of that year, they become more and more independent so that at the end of the year, we're able just to be a friendly group of faces to them and less of a support structure for them. While the commitment is a year, we can have volunteers come and go over the course of the program. So if you say, I'm really busy in this particular time of year, you can arrange your volunteer work to be heavier at some times and less at other times. But it is a really big effort that we would need a lot of people to engage in. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So I actually mentioned again the importance of the volunteers, so I just repeated that it's very, very flexible. So as we start talking about the activities that this could involve, it might seem a little bit overwhelming, but it really is just about, us having volunteers who say they're interested in leading a particular session, and then a whole bunch of people who say, I may not be a great leader, but I'm a really great giver. And so we need a lot of those so that the people who say that they do want to lead the sessions or the teams are able to have a real wealth of resources that they can draw from. And then in addition to having team leads, we would have someone from Samaritas who provides training for us and it's a 90-minute training that everybody would come to really learn more about the program. And they also help us throughout the process, where we have somebody at Samaritas that we can call, ask for advice, ask questions. Samaritas really is responsible for the integration of the refugees into the community, but we're there to help them and take a lot of that burden off of them so that the family really is receiving much more attention than what Samaritas would really be able to provide themselves. So, okay, if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is just an estimate of the kind of work intensity that this would involve. So typically, now, if we were in a situation where we didn't have the current refugee crisis, and yet there are always refugees coming here from different countries, we would typically get involved before the family ever arrives, and we would be maybe helping to get their apartment ready. A group would go to the airport with signs to welcome them. And then certainly the work is intense in those first 3 to 6 months and then gets a little easier over time. Because the crisis with Afghanistan really started in the fall, there are many families that are already here Many of them are still living in hotels that Samaritas has provided, so they may or may not be in their permanent apartment yet. So what we would need to do is, if we decide that we have enough engagement to commit, Samaritas would assign us a family, and then we would start to learn more about where they really are in the process, and again, what their particular needs are, so we can make sure that we customize the support for that particular family. But typically, the work is heavier at the beginning, getting them signed up for doctor appointments so that they have all of the shots that they need, getting kids enrolled in school if they have school-age kids, showing them around the community. And then again, over time, the goal is that we help them to become more and more independent. And so by the end of that 12 months, the work is much lighter and is really more about ensuring that they have a long-term connection and success in the community. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is really small, but you should have this as a handout as well. So we're going to talk about each of the different needs areas, and these are just examples of the kinds of activities that would be involved with that team. As we go through this, if you hear something that you say, that first thing she mentioned, I don't know that I can help with that, but the second or third bullet point, I really am interested in that. Great. Then on your little half sheet, check off that you're willing to volunteer in something in that area. So again, it's not an absolute commitment to be involved in every aspect, but it is saying, I have interest in this space, okay? Okay, so we would have a team for housing. The responsibility of that team is not to find the housing or pay for the housing. It's not about that. It's about helping that family to have everything they need getting into the house. So it would include volunteers asking the congregation if they have donations of furniture or supplies, going out to maybe the secondhand stores in town and looking for things. Samaritas actually provides a list of all of the things that would be needed for a household, including so many plates, depending on the number of family members, so many cups or utensils, all of that kind of stuff. And then Samaritas actually has a warehouse full of supplies that they prefer you're able to get donations first. But if you can't find enough donations, then a group could go to the warehouse and pull the additional items out of Samaritas's warehouse. Now, there is opportunity in this team to also, the responsibility of this team is to move the family actually into the apartment. So at some point, you may say, I'm super happy looking for donations, but I'm not physically capable of actually carrying things into the house. No problem. Maybe that's a time where we can go ask the youth if they would be interested in getting involved and maybe helping with something like that, or reaching a little further out into the community. So again, you don't have to be capable or interested in doing all of these things. And then there would be some additional things about teaching the family how to live within that apartment. So maybe finding out from their landlord, where do they put their trash? What's the recycling like here? And helping the family to learn about that. Maybe helping them understand, where do they park and how to ensure your home is safe by keeping things locked, and just all of that kind of stuff that somebody would need to know. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so then we would have a transportation team. This is really about helping the family get everywhere they need to go. So maybe you would be involved in taking them to their doctor appointments or to appointments that they have with Samaritas. It could involve helping them find typically a mosque where they would want to go to worship, and helping to arrange transportation to and from their worship services for them. It may involve finding bicycles for them and potentially finding someone who can teach them how to ride a bike if that's needed, or helping them to learn their way around the neighborhood and find the safest routes to walk or bike to get to where they need to go. Potentially, if they're on a public transportation line, you may want to teach them how to ride the bus. And I will tell you, the mission team talked about this, and we all admitted that we're very lucky that none of us have had to take the bus. So if we were doing that, I would have to go learn how to ride the bus and then teach them how to do it. But I can assure you it would be much easier for me to learn how to take the bus and teach them rather than them go do it on their own when everything is so new and very confusing. So, okay, so that's the transportation team. Next slide, please. Okay, so the school team. Typically, Samaritas actually does the enrollment of the children into the school, but we would need people to be involved in helping to ensure that the kids have supplies that they need, that they have the clothes that are appropriate, maybe helping the family to understand what the dress code is at school. Also, this is there's great opportunity for the family and the volunteers to work together so that the family knows how they should or shouldn't be involved in school activities. Anybody who gets involved in this program would be helping to bridge the gap between the teachers and the principal with the family, but always ensuring that you are helping the principals and teachers know that those conversations should be directed with the parents and you're just there to help. So this is the school team. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, the healthcare team. So this would involve making sure that they learn how our health system works, making sure that they get signed up for all of their doctor appointments. Samaritas has a list of appointments that they should, that they need to take, that they need to take care of to ensure that they are healthy. So there's a list of shots and dental appointments and eye appointments. So really just helping them to get through all of that. If there is a family member with a particular health issue, then helping them to understand, how that works and what kind of, doctor do you see here. This is again a case where our volunteers can be very helpful in bridging the gap between the medical professionals and the family, but the goal is that those conversations are directed at or with the family and that we're just there for support. With this team, there's great need to help the family understand how to make decisions regarding healthcare. So when do I take my kids to the urgent care or the ER versus what kinds of things do we typically wait for a doctor appointment? Maybe showing them the healthcare aisle at the Walgreens or at Meijer to show them, what kinds of products we have. How would you treat a child with a fever or cold? All of that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's lots of parents and grandparents in this room who would be super helpful to a family with all of those kinds of activities. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, cultural adjustment. So this is about showing the family around town, maybe taking them to do fun things that are interesting, showing them what our community has to offer. Also, teaching them how to use things around the house. So, maybe they have not had a dishwasher before, or our dishwasher looks very foreign to them. So teaching them how to use their dishwasher, how to wash their clothes, what kinds of detergents maybe are appropriate for their machine. Things like that to help really integrate them into the community and into daily living. Next slide, please. And then finally, jobs and finance. So Samaritas has an employee assistance person on staff that would help them through the employment process. However, that person, has lots of clients and limited time. So this is about helping them through that process. So maybe there's somebody who can help them in updating their resume or helping them to practice for an interview. Maybe there's somebody who comes here and, a lot of these people are highly educated and were in very skilled professions in Afghanistan, but now don't quite know what to do with those skills here. So maybe talking them through opportunities, maybe helping them to build connections if that's appropriate. This also could include some things like how to budget. Certainly, I think that we have expenses within, the way that we pay our bills or things that we need to budget for that maybe they're not used to doing, so helping them to lay out a budget and how do they apply the money that they are being given through the program or through hopefully a future employment situation, helping them figure out how much money do I really have to spend on my daily living and helping them to budget that out. So, any questions about any of this so far? Yeah. Great question. So I'll repeat it for the people at home. So what about communication? Do they speak English? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So it would really depend on the family that we were given. There are cases, I do know there's a church that is sponsoring a family, and one of the people in that family is a young man who was actually a translator for the American military. His English is excellent, and I think the family members all speak English to varying degrees, and so it would really depend on the family that we got. I will say, I've lived in a couple of different countries, one where I learned to speak the language, one where I never really did, and it is just so helpful, even if somebody doesn't speak your language, to just know that there's somebody there to help you. There's all kinds of things we can do around that. So we can get volunteers from Samaritas that can help with the language. We can use apps on the smartphone that can help us with the language. And we also need people to help them practice their language. So even just simple things about taking somebody to coffee and learning, having conversations with them to help them be able to improve their language. I know that the communication part can feel like a scary barrier for a lot of people. But it's definitely something, honestly, some of the most bonding experiences happen when you don't speak each other's language, but you just know that you're trying to connect with them and you can build those bonds even without the language. But great question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great question. So I'll repeat that. The question is, if there are things that we're supplying, is that something that the volunteer pays for, or how do we do that? So a lot of this will not involve much spend at all. Setting up the house certainly would. And the mission team has a small amount of money that we have set aside for us potentially doing this. So the ideal state is that we get donations for everything, and that's great, but that's not always the case. So we do have some money set aside, and we would work with those volunteers to say, let's talk through what your financial needs are for your team, and figure out, how we're gonna go about that. We also may have special needs where a team, somebody from that team gets up and asks the congregation for help and says, we'd like to raise $100 to set up an English as a second language class for, a member of this family. And we located one at a community college, but it's $100. Would anybody care to donate? So there could be opportunities like that.
I've got another one. How do they assess where the family is at this point? If they've been here for a while, do they give you some assessment of what they have in place and what they need?
Yeah, great question. So Samaritas would give us a general idea we've got them enrolled in school, they've done some of their doctor appointments. They would give us some general information like that. From that point forward, it would be up to us to really talk with the family to understand, would you like to start going around town and us showing you the community, or are you not ready for that? So each family will, be evolving in their kind of emotional journey that they're on. And they may say, we just want to get the things done that we have to get done. We're not quite ready to really integrate into the community. And then we would just keep communicating with them. Each of the team leads that I've laid out here would end up having a lot of conversations with the family themselves to say, what really do you need from us? We can do X, Y, and Z, but if you're not needing that, we can adapt. So we would start customizing from there.
I've got another one.
Great.
Let's see. How does the family deal with all these people dealing with them? Or do they just speak to one person who fans it out to the different groups?
So great question. So we would have one person, probably me, be like the main coordinator, but then we would have a team lead for each one of the teams. And we would work that out depending on what the specific issue is. So transportation might be one where the lead of the transportation team is talking directly with the family, because it would end up, if it came through me, probably a lot of things would get lost in that communication process. But if the family said, healthcare, we have our general appointments, we don't need any involvement from that team yet. We're not quite ready to, get a tour of the Meyer first aid aisle or anything. Then probably I would stay connected to the family about health, and then I would pull the lead of the health team in when it started seeming like they needed more engagement. Thank you for all the questions.
Since the first 3 months are the busiest, how soon do you see those first 3 months starting?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of that will depend on what kind of response we get today. So if we start to see that people are interested, we could get engaged with the family in April. If it seems like, some people are really interested, but others are just not quite sure, then we may need to take a little more time to really figure out and maybe talk one-on-one with some people who say, I might be interested, I can't really commit, so that we can talk to people more and understand really, what some of those barriers might be emotionally or mentally, and see if there's something that we can figure out. We really want to do this, but we want to do right by the family, so we don't feel comfortable committing unless we have enough people who say, I'm interested in leading, or I'm not interested in leading at all, but I'm super interested in getting involved in, some of these different areas. Yeah, Patty.
Mine is not a question. Mine was more just a comment if you're having hesitancy about volunteering.
Oh, can we give you a microphone? Because you have some great experience with this. And I love that you would share that. Thank you.
So mine is not a question. It's about if you're having some hesitancy about volunteering. 25 years ago, here at Forest Hills Presbyterian, Kurt and Nancy Strike and Kerr and I were asked to do exactly what we're asking you guys to do now. We helped a family come from Bosnia, and they did not speak any English. And we helped them practice speaking English, taking them to doctor appointments, helping them get a job, helping them get involved in their community. And I'm telling you, out of everything I've ever done at this church, it was by far one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had. To this day, it has amazed me how hard they work to get involved in the community. And just to give you an idea of what their struggles were, the wife, as they were fleeing for their life over some mountains, had a miscarriage while they were running for their life. She lost her father and her brothers. They were executed. And there's been no experience that has taught me more empathy, love, and just getting down to the very basic core of life. How to just live and survive, and how scary it was for them, and how lucky we are. And just going through that experience truly was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
Thanks for sharing that, Pat.
You bet.
Dee Dee, sorry about that.
It's okay. I presume that we would be briefed on the background of each family, and secondly, are they primarily being placed in a single area where they have other refugees nearby, or are they scattered all over the city?
Yeah, great question. So, the housing situation in Grand Rapids is really challenging, which is why a lot of them are still in temporary housing like motels. Because the shortage is so great and the need is so great, the families are getting placed into apartments wherever they find them. So they may be building relationships with other Afghan families while they're in the motel, potentially, but likely are moving to a place where maybe there are not other refugees. And so one of the things that we can help them do is to make connections with other families, either through Samaritas, or I am aware of another church sponsoring a family. Maybe there's opportunity to get them together with that family and help them build connections within the community. Also, if they are interested in going to the mosque each week, that's another place where they are able to start building connections within their own community. So, and then I think, what was the first question, Dee Dee?
If we would be briefed on their background.
Yeah, so we would be given some very basic information about the family. When did they arrive? Maybe a few details about their situation. But there are some things that Samaritas would keep confidential, so that, and you know, they want to maintain the privacy and you know, the respect that the family has, and allow them to tell their own story when they feel comfortable, so that they are not feeling like fully exposed and that everybody is super clear about the horrors that they maybe have been through. But they would give us some general information about how long they have been here. You know, did they arrive this week? Did they arrive 3 months ago? Have they, you know, if they have a support structure that has started to be created. Are there other members of their family that were able to flee? And if so, are they in the U.S.? Do we know where they are? Are they planning on being able to make it here? So they would give us some information like that. Anita.
I don't have a question either, but I just wanted to share
that the Bosnian family that we supported 25 years ago is here in our community. They are members of our community now, contributing to the economy of Grand Rapids and contributing to our community. And what a wonderful example of hospitality. I received the hospitality from this church. Ladies from this church came to my apartment. Sandy Suarez is here. I did not know how to drive the first 6 months that I lived here. They would come and pick me up for the Presbyterian Women's Bible study. Presbyterian Women's Bible study, and that's how I mean, we've been here for 28 years. I've been married for 28 years, and so the thing that I would want, if you're considering volunteering, to encourage is you're giving into the community. These people are here on special immigrant visas. They don't get to go back. They are pretty much here, so we are the first line helping them build a home here and be eventually contributors into our own community, into our own economy.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so with that, I would ask that you take that half sheet and see if there is anything that, it doesn't have to be exactly something listed on there, but maybe something that we talked about. And if you say that you're interested in potentially being involved in some of those activities, check off every box for the appropriate team that you feel comfortable with. Write your name at the top. If you feel especially called to something and would like to lead a team, let us know that by checking off the lead box. And then if you have any additional comments that you'd like to make or questions, you can write those in the comment section and we'll be in touch. And for those of you that might be watching this at home, if this is something that you're interested in volunteering or in leading sections, please, you can let me know by shooting me an email or call the church office and they can take your information down or help you get in touch with me. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys coming and listening and asking lots of questions. So thank you.